Henry Lawson loosened his tie in the elevator. 12 hours of meetings. His neck ached. The keycard slid smooth. The door clicked open. Something was wrong. The room should have been empty. Dark. Yes, but not like this. Not with shapes on his bed, der Sound. He stood in the doorway, hand on the light switch, didn't flip it, eyes adjusted. A woman, dark hair across his pillow, and beside her, smaller, a child. Curled up tight. On the chair, a white apron, folded neat. On the floor, worn shoes, placed side by side. Not thrown, placed. The child shifted in sleep. Lips moved something like, "Mama." Henry's hand found his phone in his pocket. The screen glowed in the dark. One call. That's all it would take. He stood there, watching, not moving. Not yet. If you're watching from somewhere quiet tonight, I'd love to know where you're joining from. Sometimes the right story finds us exactly when we need it. He let his hand drop from the switch. The room stayed dark. His thumb hovered over the phone screen. Front desk. 2 taps. Done. Henry ran the math in his head. Staff uniform, the apron confirmed it. Housekeeping. Probably. She knew this was a suite. Had to know. The penthouse floor didn't get confused for economy, so what was the play here? He'd seen it before. The sob story. The sudden emergency. The hand that reaches out just far enough to grab what it can. People took. That was the lesson. The only lesson that ever stuck. His jaw tightened. Call security. Let them handle it. Clean. Simple. Not his problem. The number was already pulled up. His finger moved toward the green button. The child coughed. Small. Dry. The kind of cough that came from somewhere deep in the chest. The kind that had been there for days. Henry's finger stopped. He looked toward the bed. The child had curled tighter against the woman. One small hand clutching her sleeve, even in sleep, holding on. Something cold moved through his stomach. Not sympathy. Something older. Something he didn't want to name. He lowered the phone. Not all the way, just to his side. Still, ready, the woman's face was turned toward the child. Young, maybe early 30s, but the kind of tired that added years. Lines around her eyes that didn't belong there yet, and her hands, he could see them now in the faint city light. Rough. Cracked at the knuckles. Nails broken short, not filed. Working hands. But the child's clothes were clean. Faded. Yes, old. But clean. That detail caught somewhere in his chest. On the nightstand. An empty food container. Room service box, the expensive kind, the ones they left for VIP guests. One box, only one. She'd fed the child, not herself. Henry stood still. The phone felt heavy in his hand. This wasn't his business. He knew that. 30 years of knowing exactly who to trust and who to walk away from. 30 years of not getting burned twice. Call security. Walk away. Simple. But his feet didn't move. The child coughed again, weaker this time, and the woman's arm tightened around the small body without waking. Henry put the phone back in his pocket. He took one step toward the bed, then another. Just to see clearer, that was all. Henry reached for the bedside lamp. His fingers found the switch, turned it to the lowest setting. Soft yellow light spread across the bed. The woman didn't stir. Her breathing stayed even. Deep, the sleep of someone who hadn't rested in days, maybe weeks. He studied her face, younger than he'd guessed in the dark, early 30s at most, but exhaustion had carved itself into her features. Shadows pooled beneath her eyes, dark as bruises. Her cheekbones pressed sharp against her skin, the kind of thin that didn't come from dieting. Her hair was dark, tangled from sleep, but clean. She'd washed it recently. Took time for that even when she clearly didn't have time for much else. Henry's gaze moved to the child, 4 years old, maybe 5. Hard to tell with kids that small. The girl lay curled against the woman's side, face pressed into her shoulder. One hand still clutched her mother's sleeve. The child was thin, too, but not as thin as the mother. That was the detail that stuck. Henry moved closer. The carpet muffled his footsteps. He stopped at the edge of the bed, looking down at them like they were evidence at a scene he was trying to piece together. The child's clothes were old. Faded blue shirt, elastic waistband pants that had been washed so many times the fabric looked soft as tissue. But not a stain on them. Someone had scrubbed those clothes by hand, probably in a sink somewhere, probably after a double shift. He looked at the mother's hands again, now in better light. Rough, red at the knuckles. The skin cracked in places, the kind of cracks that came from chemicals and hot water. Cleaning solutions, industrial soap, the kind that stripped away everything, including the skin itself. Her nails were broken short, not cut. Broken. Jagged edges. The nail on her right index finger had torn halfway down. Still healing. Working hands. The hands of someone who scrubbed floors and toilets and shower tiles for hours every day. But the child's fingernails were trimmed neat, round edges. Someone had taken care of that. Henry straightened. His chest felt tight, though he couldn't say why. He looked around the room, really looked this time. Taking inventory, the apron on the chair white, standard hotel issue, folded precisely, corners aligned, not thrown there in a hurry, placed with care, like she'd been taught to leave things tidy even when she had nothing. The shoes on the floor worn at the heels, the leather cracked and peeling. Old shoes, but positioned neatly side by side, the laces tucked inside. And on the nightstand, Henry moved toward it. The room service container sat there, lid open, empty except for crumbs. The remains of a chicken sandwich, maybe, or a burger, something a child would eat, one container. He checked the small trash bin beside the desk. Nothing else. No other food wrappers. No other boxes. No evidence that anyone besides the child had eaten. One meal for 2 people? He looked back at the bed. The child's face was peaceful in sleep. Round cheeks thinner than they should be, but still with some softness, a bit of color in them. The mother's cheeks had no softness left, no color either. She'd fed the child, given the whole meal to the kid, kept nothing for herself. How long had she been doing that days, weeks? Something twisted in Henry's stomach. Not pity, he didn't do pity. Something sharper. Something that felt almost like recognition. He noticed other details now, things he'd missed before. The woman's uniform was wrinkled but clean. She'd tried to smooth it before lying down. He could see the press marks where she'd folded it under her arms. Trying to keep it presentable for tomorrow's shift. Tomorrow's shift. She planned to work tomorrow, wake up before dawn, put on this same uniform, go back to pushing a cart through hallways and cleaning rooms like this one. Rooms that cost more per night than she probably made in a week. And she'd brought her child because she had nowhere else to leave her, no family, no daycare she could afford, no options at all. Henry's jaw worked. This wasn't his concern. The rules were clear. Staff sleeping in guest rooms was a fireable offense. Every hotel in the chain had the same policy. 0 tolerance. He knew because he'd invested in 3 of them. Call the front desk, report it, let management handle the rest. Simple. The word felt hollow in his head. He looked at the empty food container again, then at the mother's face, the hollows in her cheeks, the way her collarbone pressed visible against her uniform collar. How many meals had she skipped this week? How many nights had she worked double shifts just to keep whatever housing she had? How many times had she looked at her daughter and decided that the child eating was more important than her own survival? Stop. Henry pulled back from the bed. Enough of this. He wasn't here to solve anyone's problems. He wasn't here to play detective or social worker or whatever this was turning into. He was here to sleep. Wake up at 5 and catch a flight to Chicago for another meeting that would blur into all the other meetings. That was his life. Controlled, predictable, clean. This, whatever this was, didn't fit into it. He turned toward the door, hand reaching for his phone again. Front desk. 2 minutes. Done. His fingers touched the screen. Behind him, the sheets rustled. He froze. A small sound, not a cough this time. Something between a whimper and a word, muffled against fabric. Henry turned. The child was awake, eyes open, looking directly at him, not crying, not screaming, not calling for her mother, just watching, studying him with that strange intensity children sometimes have, like she could see through all the walls adults built around themselves. Henry waited for the scream, for the mother to wake, for everything to collapse into chaos. But the child didn't scream. She just looked at him quiet, serious, those dark eyes holding something that made Henry's chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in years. And she didn't look away. The child didn't blink. Henry stood frozen 3 feet from the bed, caught in that gaze. Not fear holding him there. Something else. Something he couldn't name. The girl he could see now she was a girl watched him with quiet intensity. No tears, no trembling lip, just those dark eyes, steady and serious, taking him in like she was deciding something important. She shifted closer to her mother without looking away. One small hand found the woman's arm, gripped it, still watching. Henry's throat went dry. He knew that look, knew it somewhere deep. The look of a child who had learned not to cry because crying didn't help, who had learned to watch and wait and stay quiet because that was safer than making noise. The look of a child who understood too much too early. His chest tightened. The room seemed to shrink. And then the memory came. Not gradually, all at once, like a door kicked open in a dark hallway. He was 6 years old. The hotel corridor stretched long under fluorescent lights that buzzed and flickered. His mother's hand gripped his, her palm damp. She walked fast, heels clicking, pulling him along. "Mama, where are we going?" "Hush, baby, just walk with me." Her voice was wrong, tight. He'd never heard it sound like that. They stopped outside a door. The sign said something he couldn't read yet. Manager, maybe. His mother smoothed her uniform, the white blouse she ironed every morning before the sun came up. She touched her hair, straightened her name tag, her hands shook. "Stay here. Don't move." She went inside. The door closed. Henry stood alone in the corridor. The lights hummed. Someone pushed a cleaning cart past him without looking down. A man in a suit walked by, talking loud, stepping around him like he was furniture. Through the door, voices. His mother's quiet, explaining something. Then another voice, deeper, cutting her off. The words came through muffled, but he caught pieces. Guest complaint, "Can't have this. Posse's policy. Please, if you could just let me explain what actually..." "Nothing to explain. Clear out your things." Henry pressed closer to the door. His heart beat too fast in his small chest. "Sir, I have a son. I need this job. If you would just ask her what really happened." "I don't need to ask. She's a guest. Your staff. But I wasn't rude. She wanted me to do something that wasn't my job, and I said I needed to check with my supervisor. That's all. That's not what she says." Silence. Long and terrible. Then the man's voice, cold. "Are you calling a paying guest a liar?" His mother didn't answer. "Get your things, 15 minutes, or I call security." The door opened. His mother stepped out. Her face was different. Something in it had gone flat, like a light switched off. She looked down at him, and for a second she didn't seem to see him at all. Then she took his hand. Squeezed tight. "Come on, baby. Time to go." They walked through the corridor, past the front desk where she'd worked 3 years, past the other housekeepers who suddenly found interesting things to look at on the ceiling, past the bellhop who owed her $20 and now couldn't meet her eyes. No one said anything. No one asked what happened. No one said goodbye. The front doors opened onto the street. Rain. Hard, cold rain that soaked through his thin jacket before they'd gone 10 steps. His mother stopped under the awning, looked back at the lobby one last time. The manager stood inside, behind the glass, arms crossed, watching them leave, making sure. His mother's jaw tightened. "Let's go. Henry. Mama, where are we going?" "I don't know yet. Baby." They stepped into the rain, his shoes filled with water. His mother's heels slipped on the wet pavement. Behind them. The manager turned and walked away. The doorman stared straight ahead, pretending they didn't exist. His mother's hand gripped his so tight it hurt. But she didn't cry, didn't complain, didn't stop walking. She just kept going. Henry blinked. The memory released him. He was back in the suite, standing in soft lamplight, looking at a child who looked back with those same knowing eyes. His hands were shaking. When had that started? He unclenched his fists, breathed out slow. The girl was still watching him. Quiet, patient, waiting for whatever came next the way children wait for storms to pass because they have no choice. Henry looked at the woman on the bed, really looked this time. The worn uniform, the cracked hands, the hollowed cheeks of someone who gave everything to someone else and kept nothing for herself. She was his mother, not the same person, but the same story, the same tired dignity, the same desperate hope hidden behind pressed clothes and clean hair, the same refusal to let her child see her break. And Henry's stomach dropped. He was the manager, standing in his expensive suit, in his expensive room, holding a phone that could end this woman's life with 2 words, and whatever fragile balance she'd managed to build. Send her and her child into the night, into the rain, into the same nowhere his mother had walked toward 40 years ago. The realization hit physical. His lungs wouldn't fill right. He took a step back, then another. The girl watched him move, still silent, still waiting. What was she waiting for? Permission to be scared? Permission to cry? Or maybe she was waiting to see what kind of man he was, whether he would help or turn away, whether he was like all those people in the corridor who had looked past his mother and pretended they didn't see. Henry's throat closed. 40 years of careful distance, 40 years of never getting involved, never letting anyone close enough to hurt him, never being the one who needed anything from anyone. And now here he stood, all the power in the room, all the choice in his hands, exactly where that manager had stood. The girl's lips moved. No sound came out, but he could read them. Mama, not calling her mother, not trying to wake her, just the word itself. Silent, like a prayer or a promise. Henry stood there, the phone in his pocket, the woman asleep, the child watching. 40 years between that rainy night and this moment. And he still remembered what it felt like to be 6 years old, holding his mother's hand, walking into nothing. Behind him, the sheets rustled again. The woman stirred, her arm shifted, her breathing changed shallow now, catching. Henry turned, her eyes fluttered, opened, focused slowly on the ceiling, then moved. Found him, standing over her bed, a stranger in the dark, Her whole body went rigid. The woman's body went rigid, her eyes locked onto Henry, pupils dilating in the lamplight. For 3 heartbeats, she didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at him like he was something dangerous that had materialized from nowhere. Then her arm shot around her daughter, pulling the child behind her in one fast motion, her back pressed against the headboard. Her free hand gripped the sheet. She didn't scream. That struck Henry first. Most people would scream. Wake up to find a stranger standing over your bed, anyone would scream. But she didn't. She just watched him. Silent, her eyes flicking between his face and the door behind him, measuring distance, calculating, like she'd been cornered before, like she'd learned that screaming didn't change anything. Henry raised his hand, palm out, the gesture meant to say stop. Wait, I'm not going to hurt you. It's okay, he said. His voice came out rough. He cleared his throat. I'm sorry. Her voice cut across his. Hoarse. Barely a whisper, but the words tumbled out fast, one on top of another. I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't be here. I know. She was already moving, trying to untangle herself from the sheets without letting go of her daughter. I'll leave. Right now. I'll get our things and go. Please, She was so tired and I couldn't find anywhere else, and I thought this room was empty until morning. Stop? The word came out harder than he meant. The woman froze mid-motion, one leg half off the bed. He tried again. Softer. Just stop for a second. She didn't stop. Her hand shook as she reached for her shoes on the floor, pulling her daughter with her as she moved. The girl had gone completely still, pressed against her mother's side, those dark eyes fixed on Henry. Please, the woman's voice cracked. Please, I'll go. You don't have to call anyone. I'll take her and leave right now. You won't see us again. Each word hit Henry somewhere in his chest. She wasn't asking to stay, wasn't making excuses, wasn't trying to talk her way out of anything. She was just asking to leave, to be allowed to walk out with her daughter before someone with authority arrived to make everything official. The same thing his mother never got the chance to ask for. Henry's jaw tightened. I said stop? The woman flinched, her arm wrapped tighter around the child. She finally went still, perched on the edge of the bed, shoes clutched against her chest, waiting. Henry could see her pulse jumping in her throat, could see the fine tremor running through her shoulders, could see the way she positioned herself between him and her daughter, body angled to shield, ready to take whatever came so the child wouldn't have to. He knew that stance, had watched his mother take it 100 times, in welfare offices, in landlords' doorways, in the principal's office when some teacher complained about Henry's second-hand clothes, always between him and the threat, always ready to absorb the blow. I'm not calling security, Henry said. The woman blinked. Her grip on the shoes loosened. I don't understand. I'm not calling anyone. Not right now. He ran a hand through his hair. The gesture felt awkward. Everything felt awkward. Just sit down, please. She didn't sit. Didn't trust it. Her eyes moved to the door behind him again, measuring. Why? She asked. Good question. One Henry didn't have an answer for. I don't know, he said. Just give me a minute. The woman stayed where she was, every muscle in her body coiled tight, but she stopped reaching for her things. The child tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mama. Shh, baby. It's okay. Be quiet. But it wasn't quiet. Not really. Henry could hear everything, the hum of the air conditioner, the muffled sounds of traffic from the street below, his own pulse thudding in his ears, and underneath it all, the echo of another voice, a younger voice. His voice, 40 years ago, Mama. Where are we going? I don't know yet, baby. Henry pressed his palm against his forehead. This wasn't his problem. He needed to remember that. 30 years of building walls. 30 years of keeping the world at arm's length. 30 years of never letting anyone close enough to complicate things. And here he was, standing in his hotel room at midnight, trying to figure out what to do with a stranger and her kid who had nowhere else to go. "What's your name?" he heard himself ask. The woman hesitated. Her eyes searched his face, looking for the trap. "Maria," she finally said. "Maria Santos. How long have you worked here?" 6 months. A pause. "Please, sir, I can explain." "I didn't ask for an explanation." She fell silent. Henry looked at the child, still watching him with those knowing eyes, still holding her mother's sleeve like a lifeline. "What's her name?" Maria's arm tightened. "Lily." Lily, small and delicate. Somehow, still growing in soil that should have killed her long ago. "She's hungry," Henry said. It wasn't a question. Maria's face shifted. Something flickered across it. Shame. Maybe. Or defiance. "I fed her earlier. From a room service tray someone left in the hall. The guest hadn't touched half of it, and Lily hadn't eaten since morning. And I—" She stopped, swallowed. "I know it was wrong. I know all of this is wrong. But she was so hungry, and I didn't have anywhere else to—" Her voice broke. Henry watched her fight to pull herself together, watched her straighten her spine and lift her chin even as her hands trembled against her daughter's back. Dignity. Even now. Even at the edge of losing everything. Just like his mother. "Please," Maria said. Her voice was steady again. Controlled. The voice of someone who had accepted the outcome and just wanted to get through it with whatever grace she could hold on to. "Just let us go. I'll leave my badge at the front desk. I won't make trouble. You'll never see us again." Henry stood there. The phone in his pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. He should call, should end this, should get back to his clean, controlled, predictable life. But his hand wouldn't reach for the phone, and his feet wouldn't move toward the door. Instead, he turned away from them both, walked to the window, stood there looking out at the city lights scattered across the darkness like someone had spilled a box of stars across black velvet. Behind him, he heard Maria shift, heard the rustle of sheets as she gathered her daughter closer, heard Lily start to cry soft. Muffled sounds pressed into her mother's shoulder. The sound cut through him. Sharp, clean, like a blade he'd forgotten was there. Henry reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone. The screen lit up, bright in the reflection on the window glass. He could see Maria behind him in that reflection. Could see her face go white as she watched him dial. Could see her pull Lily tight against her chest, one hand cupping the back of the child's head, shielding her from whatever was coming. Henry put the phone to his ear. It rang once, twice. "Room service," a voice answered. "How may I help you this evening?" "Suite 1847, Henry said into the phone. "I need a full meal sent up. Now?" Behind him, reflected in the window glass, Maria's face drained of color. "Of course. Sir, what would you like to order?" Henry kept his voice flat, the same tone he used in boardrooms, the tone that got things done without questions. "Soup? Chicken noodle if you have it? Bread fresh? Not the basket stuff? Grilled cheese sandwich? Cut in triangles?" He paused, thought about the child's face. "Milk? Apple juice? Whatever fruit you have that's fresh." In the reflection, Maria pulled Lily closer. Her lips were moving, whispering something to her daughter, probably telling her it would be okay, probably lying. "And for yourself, sir. That's all? Very good. Sir, will there be anything else?" Henry glanced at the reflection again. Maria sat frozen, arms wrapped around Lily, both of them staring at the back of his head with identical expressions, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Coffee," he added. "Black, and another bowl of soup, same as the first." "Excellent. Your order will be delivered in approximately 20 minutes. Make it 15. "I'll see what we can do, sir." Henry ended the call. The room went silent. No crying now. No pleading. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the distant pulse of the city outside the window. He turned around. Maria hadn't moved. Her face had gone the color of old paper. Her mouth hung slightly open, lips trembling. She thought he'd called security. That much was obvious. She'd heard sweet, and now, and full, and her mind had filled in the rest. Guards coming. Managers coming. The end of everything coming. "I don't understand," she whispered. Henry walked to the armchair in the corner, away from her, away from the bed. He sat down, putting distance between them. "You're hungry," he said. "Both of you. Food's coming." Maria shook her head slowly. Her hands gripped Lily so tight her knuckles had gone white. Why would you? I'm not calling security." She stared at him. Her jaw worked like she was trying to form words that wouldn't come. "I don't believe you. I don't need you to believe me. Just wait." The words came out harsher than he intended. Maria flinched, pulled Lily closer still. Henry exhaled, leaned back in the chair, pressed the heels of his palms against his eyes. What was he doing? 20 minutes ago, his plan had been simple. Call the front desk, report the violation, let the system handle it. Clean hands, clear conscience, nobody's problem but theirs. Now he was ordering room service for a woman he'd never met, and her kid who watched him like he might transform into something terrible at any second. His mother would have called him a fool, would have reminded him that people take advantage. That kindness was just another word for weakness, that the only person you could count on was yourself. She'd learned those lessons the hard way, had carved them into him the harder way. And yet, here he was. The minutes stretched. Maria didn't move from the bed, didn't speak, just watched him with that wary, animal alertness, the look of something cornered, waiting to see which way the blow would come. Lily had stopped crying. She peeked out from behind her mother's arm, studying Henry with that same intense gaze from before. "You're not calling the police." Her voice was small but clear. "Lily, hush. It's fine." Henry met the child's eyes. "No, I'm not calling anyone." "Why not?" "Lily." "Because I don't want to," Henry said. He searched for words a 4-year-old might understand. Found none that made sense to himself either. "Sometimes people just don't." Lily considered this. Her head tilted slightly. "Are you mad at us?" "No. Mama said we'd get in trouble." "Lily, please stop talking. You're not in trouble." Henry's voice softened without him meaning it to. "Not for me." Maria's laugh was sharp. Bitter. No humor in it at all. "You can't promise that." Her chin lifted. "You don't know what happens next. You feel sorry for us right now? Sure. Do something nice. Feel good about yourself. But tomorrow I'm still out of a job and you're on a plane somewhere. And we're—" She stopped, looked at Lily, didn't finish. The words hit harder than Henry expected. Because she was right. That was exactly how it usually worked. The wealthy feeling momentarily generous, tossing charity like coins to a beggar, then walking away with a warm glow and a clean conscience while nothing actually changed. He'd been on the receiving end of that kind of charity as a kid, knew exactly what it was worth, knew how fast it evaporated when the need became inconvenient. "Maybe," Henry said slowly, Maybe that's exactly what happens. Maria's eyes narrowed. But right now, there's food coming. Both of you are going to eat it. He held up a hand before she could argue. Not asking. Not giving you a choice? Your daughter is hungry. You're hungry. That's what's happening in the next 15 minutes. Everything else can wait. Maria opened her mouth, closed it, her jaw tight, muscles working beneath the skin. Why? She asked again. The word seemed to cost her something. I need to know why. People don't just do this, not without wanting something back. Henry looked at her, at the exhaustion carved into her features, at the defiance still burning in her eyes despite everything. My mother was a housekeeper, he said. The words came out before he could stop them, before he could wrap them in armor or swallow them back down. Maria went still. She worked in a hotel like this one. Long time ago. Henry's voice stayed flat, controlled. One night, a guest made up a complaint. The manager didn't ask questions, didn't want to hear her side, just threw her out. Middle of the night, raining. He paused. I was 6, holding her hand, walking out into nothing. Silence. Lily looked between them, not understanding the words but sensing their weight. No one helped, Henry continued. Not one person. They all just looked away and let it happen. Maria's expression shifted. Something cracked behind her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. That's terrible, but that doesn't mean... A knock at the door. Everyone froze. Henry stood. Maria's hand shot out, grabbing Lily, pulling her tight against her chest. It's just the food, Henry said. But Maria's face had gone white again, her eyes fixed on the door like it was the entrance to something she couldn't escape from. How do I know that... Her voice shook. How do I know you didn't call them first? That this wasn't all just some kind of trick to keep us here until... Another knock. Louder. Room service, Mr. Lawson. Henry moved toward the door. Behind him, he heard Maria press Lily's face against her shoulder. Heard her whispering something soft, a prayer. Maybe. Or just a promise she couldn't keep. Henry's hand touched the door handle. He paused, looked back. Mother and daughter, huddled together on his bed, waiting for everything to fall apart, the same way his mother had waited, 40 years ago, for the world to tell her she didn't belong. Trust me, he said quietly. Maria's eyes met his, full of fear, full of doubt. But she didn't run. Henry opened the door. A young man in a white jacket stood in the hallway. Behind him, a cart laden with covered dishes. Steam rose from beneath silver lids. Not security, not police, not management, room service. Henry stepped aside. The attendant wheeled the cart in without glancing at the woman and child on the bed. Professional, trained to see nothing, remember nothing, comment on nothing. Where would you like it, sir? Table by the window. The attendant transferred the dishes with practiced efficiency. Soup in ceramic bowls, steam curling up, fresh bread in a cloth-lined basket, a grilled cheese sandwich cut into perfect triangles on a white plate, glasses of milk and apple juice, a pot of coffee, fruit arranged in a small bowl, strawberries, green grapes, sliced apple. The smell hit the room, warm bread, chicken broth, melted cheese. Henry signed the check, added a tip that made the attendant's eyebrows lift slightly. Will there be anything else? Mr. Lawson, that's all. The cart wheeled out. The door clicked shut. Silence. Henry turned to face the bed. Maria sat exactly where she'd been, arms wrapped around Lily, eyes fixed on the food like she was looking at something that couldn't possibly be real. The smell of the soup drifted across the room. Lily's nose twitched. Her eyes went wide, locked on the grilled cheese, on the strawberries, on the steam rising from the bowls. "Mama," her voice was barely a whisper. "Mama, food." Maria didn't move. Henry walked to the table, pulled out one chair, then another. The legs scraped softly against the carpet. "Eat," he said. One word. No explanation. Maria shook her head. The motion was slow, mechanical. "I can't." "You can. You will." Henry sat down in the armchair across the room, putting distance between himself and the table, giving them space. "Go on." "I don't understand what you want." "I don't want anything. I want you to eat." "It doesn't make sense. Doesn't have to." "Food's getting cold." Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. Hard, insistent. "Mama, please. I'm hungry." Maria's face crumpled, not into tears, something worse, a kind of collapse that happened behind her eyes, invisible to anyone who wasn't watching close. The look of someone who had been holding herself together by pure will and had finally run out of whatever fuel kept that will burning. She stood up, slowly, her legs unsteady beneath her. She took Lily's hand and walked toward the table like she was approaching something that might snap shut on her at any moment. At the table, she stopped, stared at the food, stared at Henry. "Sit down," he said. "Both of you." Maria pulled out the chair, lifted Lily into it. The child's hands were already reaching for the sandwich before her mother could stop her. "Wait! Let her eat!" Maria's hand hovered in the air, trembling, then dropped. Lily grabbed a triangle of grilled cheese, bit into it. Her eyes squeezed shut. A small sound escaped her half-sigh, half something else. The sound of real hunger meeting real food after too long without. Maria watched her daughter eat. Her own hands lay flat on the table, palms down, fingers spread wide, shaking. "You too," Henry said. Maria looked at the second bowl of soup, at the bread, at the fruit. She didn't reach for any of it. "I can't," she said again. Her voice was thin, barely there. "I can't just sit here and this isn't how things work. You don't know me. I broke into your room. You didn't break in. You have a key card. You work here. That makes it worse." Her voice cracked. "I knew better. I knew the rules. She looked at Lily, who was already reaching for the second triangle of sandwich. She was so tired. She'd been coughing all day, and I couldn't find anyone to watch her. And the shelter wait list is 3 months long, and I thought if we could just sleep somewhere warm for a few hours." She stopped, pressed her lips together. Her chin trembled. "I'm not a charity case." The words came out sharp, bitter. I've always worked. 12-hour shifts. Double shifts when they'll give them to me. I've never asked anyone for anything." "I didn't say you did. Then why is this happening?" Her hand swept toward the table, toward the food, toward all of it. "People like you don't do things like this. Not for people like me. Not without wanting something." Henry didn't answer. Maria's jaw tightened. She picked up the spoon. Her hand shook so badly that soup sloshed over the rim on the first try. She tried again, got the spoon to her mouth, swallowed. Her eyes closed. She took another spoonful, then another, faster each time. The movements of someone who had forgotten how empty they were until the first taste reminded them. Lily finished her sandwich, started on the strawberries. Red juice stained her small fingers. Maria stopped eating, set down the spoon. Half the bowl still full. Her face had gone pale. Sweat beaded at her hairline. "I need..." She pushed back from the table, stumbled toward the bathroom. The door swung shut behind her. Henry heard retching, then the sound of running water, Then nothing. Lily looked up from her strawberries, juice dripping down her chin. "Is Mama okay?" "She's okay. She ate too fast. That's all." Henry kept his voice even, calm. "Finish your fruit." Lily looked at the bathroom door, then at him, then back at the door. She put another strawberry in her mouth, chewed slowly, still watching. The water ran for a long time. 5 minutes, maybe more. When Maria finally came out, her face was damp, red around the eyes. She'd splashed water on her cheeks, tried to wash away the evidence of whatever had happened in there, but Henry could see it. The particular shame of a body that had betrayed its own desperation, of hunger so deep that even relief became violence. She stood in the bathroom doorway, not looking at him, not looking at anything. "Mama!" Lily slid off her chair, ran to her mother, wrapped small arms around her legs. "I ate all the strawberries, and the sandwich, and I drank the milk." Maria's hand came down to rest on her daughter's head. Automatic, gentle. But her eyes stayed on the floor. "Thank you," she said, quiet, to no one in particular, to the carpet. "Come, sit," Henry said. "Try the bread. Easier on an empty stomach." Maria didn't move. "Please." The word hung there. She lifted her head, met his eyes for the first time since she'd come out of the bathroom. Her face was stripped bare now. No defenses left, no armor, just exhaustion and confusion, and something that looked almost like fear of hoping. "Why?" Her voice was raw, broken. "Why are you doing this?" Henry was quiet for a long moment. The question hung in the air between them. Why? The only question that mattered. The one he'd been asking himself since he put the phone back in his pocket instead of calling security. He looked at Maria, at the damp hair stuck to her forehead, at the way she held herself, shoulders hunched, arms wrapped around her middle like she was trying to hold herself together by force. Then he looked at Lily, who had wandered back to the table and was picking at the remaining grapes, oblivious to the weight in the room. "Sit down," Henry said. "I'll tell you." Maria hesitated. Then she walked to the table, slow and careful, and lowered herself into the chair across from where Henry sat. Her movements were stiff, guarded, like she expected the floor to give way beneath her at any moment. Henry leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I told you my mother was a housekeeper," he said. "What I didn't tell you was what happened after she got fired." Maria watched him, silent, waiting. "We had nothing, no savings, no family nearby, no safety net." Henry's voice stayed flat, controlled, but something underneath it had shifted. "We spent 2 weeks in a shelter, then 3 months in a motel that charged by the week, roaches in the walls, mold in the bathroom, but it was all we could afford." Lily had stopped eating. She was looking at Henry now, grape juice on her chin, something in her small face that said she understood more than a 4-year-old should. "My mother worked 3 jobs," Henry continued, "cleaning houses during the day, waitressing at night, weekend shifts at a laundromat. She'd come home at midnight, iron her uniform for the next day, sleep 4 hours, and do it all again." He paused, looked at his hands. "She never complained, never cried in front of me, never let me see how scared she was." His jaw tightened. "But I knew. Kids always know." Maria's eyes had filled with tears. She didn't wipe them away. "One night I woke up and she wasn't in bed. Found her in the bathroom, sitting on the floor, crying into a towel so she wouldn't wake me up." Henry's voice caught. He cleared his throat. "That's when I understood. We were alone. Nobody was coming to help us. Nobody cared whether we made it or not." The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. I swore I'd never be that helpless again. Henry said, "Never be poor again. Never need anyone again. Spent 40 years building walls, making money, keeping everyone at arm's length." He looked up at Maria. "And then I walked into this room tonight, and I saw you, and I saw her." Maria's breath hitched. "I saw my mother," Henry said quietly. 40 years ago, holding my hand in the rain, walking out of that hotel with nothing, no one helping, no one even looking at us." A tear slid down Maria's cheek. She didn't move to wipe it. "I'm not helping you because I feel sorry for you." Henry's voice was steady now. "Certain. I'm helping you because I know what it's like to be invisible, to work until your hands bleed and still not have enough, to watch your mother give you the food off her plate and pretend she's not hungry." He leaned back, exhausted, like he'd set down something heavy he'd been carrying for decades. "No one helped us," he said, "and I spent my whole life being angry about that, building walls because of it. But tonight—" He stopped, shook his head. "Tonight, I can be the person who wasn't there for my mother, the one who should have been." Maria sat very still. Tears ran down her face. But she wasn't sobbing, wasn't breaking down. These were different tears, quiet ones. The kind that come when something inside finally unclenches. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "About your mother, about all of it. Don't be sorry, just eat the bread, and stay here tonight." Maria's head snapped up. "What? Stay here, both of you. It's late. You're exhausted. She's exhausted." He nodded toward Lily, who had curled up in her chair, eyes heavy. "I'll go down to the lobby, find somewhere else to sleep." "No." Maria shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. You've already done too much. I can't let you give up your room. It's not giving up. It's... No." Her voice was stronger now, some of the steel coming back into it. "I won't take your bed and make you sleep in a lobby. I'm not that person." Henry almost smiled. "Almost. Fine," he said. "Compromise. I take the sofa. You and Lily take the bed. Nobody sleeps in the lobby." Maria looked at the sofa, then at the bed, then at her daughter, who was now fully asleep in the chair, head lolling to one side. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly. "Accept help. Let someone be kind without waiting for the catch. There's no catch. There's always a catch. Not tonight." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. The lie, the angle, the hidden agenda. She didn't find it. "Okay," she finally said. The word came out small, fragile. "Okay." Henry stood, walked to the closet, found the extra blanket and pillow the hotel always stocked, carried them to the sofa. Maria lifted Lily from the chair. The child didn't wake, just made a small sound and nestled into her mother's shoulder and carried her to the bed. She laid her down gently, pulled the covers up, smoothed the hair back from her forehead. Then she sat on the edge of the mattress, looking at Henry. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know how to... You don't have to say anything. Get some sleep. We can talk more in the morning." Maria nodded, lay down next to her daughter, pulled Lily close. Henry switched off the lamp. The room went dark except for the faint glow of city lights through the curtains. He stretched out on the sofa. It was too short for him. His feet hung over the armrest, but he'd slept in worse places. Much worse. The room settled into quiet. He could hear Lily's soft breathing, Maria's slower, deeper breaths as exhaustion finally pulled her under. Henry stared at the ceiling. He thought about his mother, about the bathroom floor where he'd found her crying, about all the years he'd spent running from that memory, building walls against it, refusing to let anyone close enough to remind him of how it felt to be helpless. And now here he was, a stranger and her child in his bed, nothing resolved, nothing fixed, just a meal shared and a night's rest offered. It wasn't much. He knew that, but maybe it was enough. For now, he closed his eyes. For the first time in longer than he could remember, the weight in his chest felt lighter. Morning light filled the room. Henry woke to the sound of small feet padding across carpet. He opened his eyes, blinked against the brightness streaming through the curtains. Lily was running circles around the suite, arms spread wide, making airplane noises under her breath. He sat up on the sofa, his neck ached from the awkward angle, his back protested as he stretched. But something else felt different. Lighter. "Mama, look, I'm flying." "Lily, quiet down. You'll bother." Maria stopped when she saw Henry sitting up. "Oh, you're awake. I'm sorry. I tried to keep her calm, but she woke up with all this energy and oh, it's fine." Henry rubbed his eyes. "What time is it? Almost 8?" He'd slept 5 hours, more than he usually got, and, somehow deeper, Maria stood by the window, a mug of tea in her hands. She'd showered, her hair was still damp, combed back from her face. She wore her uniform again, wrinkled but clean. She looked different in daylight. Younger. The shadows under her eyes were still there, but something in her posture had shifted. Less hunched, less braced for impact. "There's coffee," she said. "I called down for breakfast. I hope that's okay. I didn't know what you—" "That's fine." A room service cart sat by the window. Eggs, toast, orange juice, more fruit. Steam rose from covered dishes. Lily zoomed past, still being an airplane. "She seems better," Henry said. Maria's face softened as she watched her daughter. She slept through the night. First time in weeks. She paused. "Thank you. For everything." Henry stood, walked to the cart, poured himself coffee. The familiar ritual of it, the weight of the cup, the bitter smell helped him find his footing. "Your shift," he said. "You were supposed to start 2 hours ago." Maria's hand tightened on her mug. No. I called in sick. Left a message. They'll ask questions. They will." She looked down at her tea. "I'll deal with it. Submit my resignation. Probably. It's not like I can explain where I was all night." Henry sipped his coffee, watched Lily discover the fruit bowl and start picking out grapes. "What happened?" he asked. "How did you end up here?" Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she walked to the table and sat down, set her mug aside, folded her hands. "My husband left 8 months ago," she said. Her voice was steady, matter-of-fact. "Said he wasn't ready to be a father. Packed a bag and walked out. Haven't heard from him since." Lily was humming now, building a small tower out of grape stems. "We had an apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Then I lost that job, the company went under, and I couldn't make rent. Moved to a smaller place, lost that too." Maria's jaw tightened. "I've been staying at a friend's, sleeping on her couch. But she has her own problems, her own kids. I can't stay there forever." "What about family?" "My mother's in a nursing home. Dementia. My father passed years ago. I have a sister in Texas, but she's got 3 kids and a husband who just got laid off." Maria shook her head. "Everyone's struggling. I can't add to their burden." Henry nodded slowly. He knew that math. The calculation of who you could ask for help and what it would cost them. Sometimes the answer was no one. "I've been on the shelter wait list for 3 months, Maria continued. "Called every day. Nothing opens up, so I work double shifts when I can get them. Save every penny, and hope something changes before—" She stopped, looked at Lily. Before she realizes how bad it is. The room was quiet except for Lily's humming. Henry set down his coffee. "I know some people," he said. Maria's head came up, her eyes wary again. "Not like that," he said quickly. "Business contacts. One of them runs a cleaning company, commercial accounts office buildings, not hotels, day shifts, better pay than this place." Maria didn't move. "They have a childcare arrangement for employees. On-site? It's not fancy, but it's safe and free." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's always looking for reliable workers. People who show up, people who don't cut corners." Henry met her eyes. "From what I've seen, you qualify." Maria's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against the table. You can't just fix my life. That's not how it works. I'm not fixing anything. I'm telling you about a job opening. What you do with that information is up to you." Lily looked up from her grapestem tower. "Mama, can I have more juice?" "In a minute, baby." Maria stared at Henry, searching his face the way she had last night, looking for the angle, the trap. "It's not guaranteed," Henry said. "She'd have to interview you. Check your references. You might not even like it there, but it's a chance. Better than what you have right now." Maria was quiet for a long time. "Okay," she finally said. "Give me her number. I'll call." Henry pulled out his phone, typed a message. The response came back within 30 seconds. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll text you the address." Maria nodded. Her hands had stopped shaking. They ate breakfast together. Lily chattered about the airplanes she was going to fly when she grew up. Maria laughed a real laugh, not the bitter one from last night, and Henry found himself almost smiling. When the plates were empty, Maria stood. "We should go, before someone really does start asking questions." Henry walked them to the door. Lily tugged on his sleeve. He looked down at her. "Thank you for the food," she said. Very serious, very formal, like someone had taught her that manners mattered. "You're welcome. And for letting us sleep in your bed. You're welcome for that too." She considered him for a moment, then she threw her arms around his legs and squeezed tight. Henry went still. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had hugged him. His hand came down, awkward, and rested on the top of her head. Her hair was soft, fine, like his mother's had been, in the photographs from before. "Bye-bye," Lily said into his knee. "Goodbye, Lily." Maria gathered their things, the worn shoes, the folded apron, the small bag that held nothing worth mentioning. She paused at the door. "Your mother," she said quietly. "I hope she knows, wherever she is, what kind of man she raised." Then they were gone. The door clicked shut behind them. Henry stood alone in the suite. Sunlight poured through the windows. The bed had been made not by housekeeping, but by Maria. Before breakfast, hospital corners, sheets pulled tight enough to bounce a quarter off, the pillows arranged just so. She'd left it better than she'd found it. He walked to the window, looked down at the street below. A few minutes later, two figures emerged from the hotel entrance, small and smaller, hand in hand. Lily looked up, scanning the building. Henry raised his hand. She spotted him, waved back. Big, enthusiastic waves that used her whole arm. He watched them walk down the sidewalk until they disappeared around a corner. Then he stood there a while longer, looking at nothing, thinking about his mother, about that rainy night 40 years ago, about the manager's face behind the glass, about all the people who had looked away, and about choices, the ones we make, the ones we don't. His phone buzzed. Chicago. The meeting he was supposed to fly to. Henry looked at the screen for a long moment, then he picked up his coffee cold now and drank what was left. Outside. The city moved on. Traffic flowed. People hurried to wherever they were going. The world kept turning the way it always did. But something had shifted, something small, something quiet. Henry set down the empty cup, reached for his phone, and for the first time in a very long time, he didn't know what came next. That felt okay. This story may leave something quiet sitting in your chest, something that doesn't have a name. That's all right. Some feelings aren't meant to be explained. Many of us have stood where Henry stood, holding power we didn't ask for, facing someone who expected the worst from us. Some of us have been Maria, bracing for the blow that always seemed to come. And perhaps you've been the child too, watching adults make choices that would shape your world, hoping without knowing what you were hoping for. We carry these moments with us, the times we were seen, the times we weren't, the hands that reached out when no one was watching, and the ones that didn't. Not every wound gets healed in one night. Not every choice fixes everything. And that's okay. Sometimes all we get is one meal shared, one morning that feels a little less heavy than the night before. Sometimes that's enough to keep going. You don't need to hold anything from this story. You're allowed to let it rest. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening.